Welcome to my channel once again. And today I'm going to teach you the first poem from your 10th standard book. It's called Dust of Snow. Now this is also written by Robert Frost, and already I told you in my earlier poem about Robert Frost that he is an American writer, and his book was not published in America. His poems were not published in America, but it was first published in England, and later on it was published in America, and he became to be known as a very famous poet. So now I'm going to tell you the central idea of the poem. Now there are so many things in our life that we consider it to be very insignificant. They are very small things which we do not give much importance to those things. We think that they are just some simple things. We don't have to give much importance to these things, and we just brush it away or we just put it away. But sometimes what happens is, even that very small thing that you thought was insignificant, that was unimportant to you, becomes very much important to you, and it could change your whole life. That is what the poem is about. Now the poem expresses, this is the central idea. I already gave you a small summary of the central idea. Now the poem expresses the significance of small things, the importance of small things changing one's mood. Through this poem, we get a message that we should not ignore. Okay, that is what the message is. We should not ignore small things that happen in our life. We should consider those small things as also very important, because we should hope for the best, even in the worst situations. Even when the situations are worst, we should always have a positive attitude towards it. Never be an pessimist. Always try to be an optimist. Think positively. That is what you have to do. Sometimes these small things can be very important in our lives. And that is what the poem tells us. We must also remember, one very great thing that we should remember is that nature and the objects have the ability to make oneself happy and come out of hopelessness. This is what the central idea is about. Now, supposing you feel very hopeless on a particular day, you feel so hopeless, you feel that everything, you have a very big negative feeling in your mind, and you feel everything is over, this is the end. Never regret for that. Do not think like that. Every time, the worst happens for the best, and we should always hope for the best. So when you feel like that, just go into nature. Take a walk in the nature, walk in a park, or walk next to a stream, go to the beach, enjoy the cool wind, and suddenly you will see that you have changed. Your mood has completely changed when you come back to your home. And that is what this poem is all about. Now I'm going to start. Now in this poem, the poetic devices that have been used are symbolism. As earlier also in a poem I told you about symbolism. The hemlock tree and crow, they are used as symbols, as negative symbols. Because crow is black in color, and none of us care about a crow. Nobody ever keeps a crow as a pet, or nobody ever keeps it in its home, at its home, because they think the crow is an ugly creature and they don't like it. But sometimes even that crow has some positive sides. You can try to take the positive aspects of life. When you look at a crow, don't think as a negative object. Think something that is positive. And the hemlock tree is a very poisonous tree. It's a very poisonous tree, and the poet has used these two objects. Even in the last sentence of this poem, there is one word, rude, R-U-E-D. Actually, the poet takes that word from rue, R-U-E. R-U-E-D means regret. Rue also means a medicinal plant. It's positive. So there are three symbols here, in fact. One is the crow and the other hemlock tree. Crow is negative. Hemlock tree is a poisonous plant, and so it is also considered to be negative. And as I told you in the last sentence, rue is a medicinal plant which can be taken as positive. Now, and the next thing is alliteration. Has given my heart. H and H. Then, and saved some part. Saved some. Okay. Now the poet, what does he do? The poet uses the negative symbols. Now he has used negative symbols. The poet has used negative symbols to bring about a positive change in him. In this poem, we see that these negative symbols are being used by the poet to bring positive changes into him. Now I'm going to start the poem. The poem, it is, the way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. Now in this stanza, the poet remembers a particular day when he was very depressed, when he was very disappointed, and he had a lot of negative feelings in his mind. And just to keep away those feelings, he came and sat under a hemlock tree. Now see, the poet has chosen no other tree other than a hemlock tree. The hemlock tree is a poisonous tree. It's a very poisonous tree. So he's come and sitting under a hemlock tree, and on the hemlock tree, in the branch, sits a crow, which is also giving us a negative feeling. So he says, the way a crow shook down on me. So the poet says that one day he was very depressed, or he was very disappointed, and he came and he sat down under a hemlock tree. And suddenly there was a crow sitting on the tree, and the crow shook the branch. And it was a winter season. The trees were all completely covered with snow. And the snow flakes, or the snow, dropped down on the shoulders of the poet. And when the snow fell on the poet became completely refreshed, and his mood completely changed from negative to positive. So he has used two negative symbols over there, the hemlock tree and the crow. He has used these two negative symbols to bring positivity into his life. So that is what I told you, that we should always hope for the best from the worst. We should not think that it is over and there are small things. Now this is a very small thing. It's not a very big thing. If a crow sits on a tree and shakes some snow onto you, sometimes another person other than the poet may not find it so very significant. He may not find it so important. But for the poet, this small incident changed his mood completely. So that is what he says here. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree. Now in this stanza, the poet remembers an incident that changed his mood. Now he remembers a particular incident that changed his mood. Once the poet was in a depressed state or a depressed mood and was hopeless. So one day, the poet was in a very depressed mood, a very sad mood, a very hopeless mood, and so he was standing. Okay, he was standing, and suddenly what happened? He was standing, or it could be that he was standing. Now the poet, in this poem, it is not clearly mentioning whether he was sitting under the tree, or he was standing under the tree, or he was passing under the tree. It's not mentioned. It's only mentioned that the crow shook dust onto him. That's all it is mentioned. Probably the poet could have been standing under the tree. He was in a very depressed mood, and suddenly, what happened? A crow sitting on the tree shook it, and the snowflakes, the powder of snow, fell on the poet. The snow from the tree fell on the poet. Now let's look at the next stanza, what happened. Has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. So he says, has given my heart a change of mood. What is the meaning of that? When the snowflakes fell on the poet's mood completely changed. He was in a hopeless state. It changed from a hopeless state to a happy mood. It changed his mood completely. That is what he says, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of the day. It means that half of the day he was in a depressed mood. If he had not passed under the hemlock tree, or if he had not come and stood under the hemlock tree, the whole day would have been spoiled for the poet. So the poet feels that he has saved half of the day. Half of the day went into hopelessness, and the other half of the day he was happy. His mood completely changed. What was the cause of the change? The snowflakes falling from the tree onto the poet. And how did the snowflakes fall? There was a crow sitting on the tree, and the crow shook the branch, and the snow, the powdered snow, fell onto the poet, and it completely changed his mood. Okay, it completely changed his mood and saved half of the day, a part of the day I had rued. I had rued means I had regretted. Now he is using the word rued here, regretted, to feel sorry. And the rue has another meaning. It is a medicinal plant. It is also used as a medicinal plant, rue. So he is using two trees here, one a poisonous and one medicinal. But here rued means felt sorry or regretted. So the powdery snow which fell on the poet, what did it do to the poet? It changed the mood to happiness. It changed the mood to happiness. Earlier, he was depressed and sad. Earlier, the poet was very sad. He was very depressed. Now, till now, the poet had spent half of the day in sadness and depression. But now, he starts to feel refreshed. Now, why does he start to feel refreshed? He felt better. Why did he feel better? Because the cold snow fell onto him. And this happened only because the crow shook the branch. The incident showed that some part of the day which he would have otherwise spent in regret. Otherwise, if the snow had not fallen on the poet, the other half of the day would also have been spent in regret. So that is what the poet says. So this is what the poem is about. And the most important message that the poet wants to give each one of you or every reader of this poem is that there are many small insignificant things that happen in our life which we take it as not important. But even that small, very insignificant thing that happened could bring a great change into your life. So always hope for the best. Try to be optimistic and never try to be pessimist. So this is the message from the poem. I hope you enjoyed this poem. I'll come back to you with another poem the next time. Share and subscribe. Share this to all your friends and subscribe, please. Thank you.